Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm so excited. We're here with a great panel of experts. It's day 4 of Customer Service Week, and we're starting off launching our leadership best practices session with some thought leaders from Salesforce. I'll let them all introduce themselves. Tracy with Estee Lauder Companies. But first, Brian Solis, thank you so much for being here. Brian's title is Global Innovation Evangelist. You gotta tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's great to see you. And hello, everybody. Welcome. We're really looking forward to this conversation today and also excited to be part of Customer Service Week. On that note, Global Innovation Evangelist is definitely one of my favorite titles I've ever had. For a couple decades, too many years, I want to admit, I've been a digital analyst, anthropologist, and author. And when I joined Salesforce to take all of that work to help our customers, my boss, John Toshik, came up with the title and said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "Let's do it." That might be the coolest title I've ever had. So with that said, what an absolute pleasure it is to be here. And one of the topics that I'm focused on in my work is the reimagination of customer service and what it means to serve in this new world that we live in. And I am so excited to be joined by 2 amazing people who are going to share their stories, their experiences, and help us leave this conversation a little bit smarter. And so I'm going to turn it over to them here to just make a quick introduction about them and their role. And then we'll just jump into the conversation. So Tracy with Estee Lauder. Tracy, let's turn it over to you to introduce yourself first.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Kellaway. I have not got such an amazing title as Brian. I am Director of Consumer Care for Estee Lauder Companies in the UK. So that means that I'm responsible for ensuring that we deliver our brand's promise to right across all of our 16 brands that we have in the UK that come under the Estee Lauder umbrella. And I have around about scarily 30 years experience in contact centers, customer service, customer experience. So it's great to be here today, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, what a privilege. Thank you for making time for us as well. And over to you, Jim, our very own Jim Roth.
Hey, Brian, how are you? Excited for this conversation. Great to see you, Tracy. I run customer service for Salesforce. So that's all of our products around the globe. And get to be customer zero of a lot of our amazing products like Service Cloud. So really excited about this conversation. Looking forward to the dialogue and all the Q&A from the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jim. And I believe you're both coming in from the UK today, which is very special. I kind of wish I hopped a flight and maybe we could have had a virtual conversation in the same country. So no, let's just jump right in.
Maybe not.
Did the common background give it away, Brian? Is that how you knew we were both in London?
It's exactly right. Oh boy. Well, I'm coming in from Lake Tahoe, where it's dark and it's rainy outside right now. So I'm not going to be having too much fun here, but let's have some fun in this conversation. I have a big first question just to kind of get things going. One of the things that I'm so excited about, especially being part of Customer Service Week, is that going back to March 2020 to where we are today, we really started to see this rapid evolution of the role of customer service within the organization. In my work here at Salesforce, I'm working with customers where we're seeing this incredible transformation of service from a cost center to one of driving growth, playing multiple roles now within the company. So Tracy, let's start with you. How are you really seeing the role of service starting to be reimagined now?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think, who'd have thought, like you say, back March 2020, what, the acceleration that we were going to see in the kind of digital space. And I think several things have happened for me. I think, part of our service delivery has just switched so much into the digital space, but people buying and relying much more, on that digital experience, things like, virtual services, video chat, being able to go into a virtual store and purchase things. I think a massive change in that space. And I think as well, seeing the teams evolve from being, like you say, in terms of like being a cost center to a growth center, but seeing where they've evolved from kind of being transactional to much more conversational, much more about being the friend and the support and the kind of helping hand to the people that they're supporting on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You just got me thinking about how even the role of technology in customer service has been evolving as well. In the fact that in some ways we use technology to sort of scale efficiencies, speed, access to information, but not always necessarily that human interaction. And with artificial intelligence and automation, the way that we're seeing technology deployed now is actually bringing a more human-like experience to service, which is also wonderful, coming from a customer's perspective too. Jim, over to you on this one.
Yeah, we're definitely in a work from anywhere world, and it happened very abruptly. We all kind of became truly work from anywhere over the span of about a week. Back at the start of the pandemic. And certainly that's put a lot of focus on technology, because we all needed technology to enable work from anywhere. And for the most part, I would say that our industry has performed really well. Now, there are certainly some pockets. We all have projects that we wish were done a little bit sooner. We might have, that telephony channel or some other channel that wasn't cloud-based and kind of gave us some fits. But remarkably, thanks to the investment of the last decade in technology, customer satisfaction scores are kind of at an all-time high. Productivity has been good. So we kind of proved, maybe in an unplanned way, that this actually works. And, the customer preferences are changing too. We've seen in our case, a 3x increase in customers using chat as an example. And I think it's just people have this expectation of always on and always there. And the pandemic's kind of heightened that. I think, a couple other things come to mind, like even the term contact center. I don't think contact center, that's a place, right? And it's really just more remote service is kind of how I think about it. It happens remotely. By the way, you could be sitting in a contact center, and that's remote as well. Or you could be sitting at home, or like me, I'm in a hotel. And so it's kind of this remote service concept. And you also kind of alluded to this, Brian, too. I think there's more focus than ever on, we think about our customer service as a part of customer success. So how do we make customers successful? It's far more than just solving a problem, a break fix problem, or order defect or a return. And that brings in the possibility of, are there things to make customers more successful that I'm going to sell or position? Do they need to be on a different service plan? Do they need an additional product or a replacement part or things like that? So there's all these other opportunities there as well. But it's certainly mass acceleration of the technology, all in the spirit of customer success.
I love that. The terminology, I think, has been part of the challenge for so many years. If you think about the dawn of the contact center going back to the 50s and 60s, and just even hearing you say the words remote service, and then I started to think about field service, and what new names can we come up with that as well to essentially bring back the spirit of service, right? I mean, no one ever said that, hey, the best way to help a customer is to give them a knowledge center and to try to get them as off the phone as fast as we can. It's really about helping people. And it's such a vulnerable moment in the customer journey that you think when it's so emotional, to use technology and to use process and policy as a way to help them even feel better leaving, the psychology of that is just amazing. So thank you for that, Jim. Tracy, I want to throw this one over to you first. With the spirit of transformation in the role of service, maybe even the terminology as well, how are you seeing, for example, in your work, how is customer service and customer service teams helping to drive innovation across the business?
So I think probably a few things in that space. I mean, certainly what we see, customers want, convenience, they want personalization, and they want consistency at the end of the day. And I think, we're very much kind of aligned to that and helping to drive that through, the expectations of things like 24/7 service, using chatbots, for example, to to remove some of those transactional things so that we can then have the opportunity to focus on the important conversations or the moments that matter, as you mentioned. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting for me, and you mentioned it at the start, but is this piece around kind of, always on and always there. I think the industry has spent so much time trying to move towards pushing consumers down a certain channel that work for the business, rather than actually looking at what is it the consumer wants and how do we, support the consumer and service the consumer. So again, our focus is very much more kind of on the real time. But what I think from a how the centre has helped to kind of redefine some really key insights come through the customer service centre, and never has that insight been so valuable as it was during the last kind of 12 to 18 months, where businesses realised this was their main touch point with their consumers. What are consumers telling us? So for Estee Lauder companies, it's brought a real range of things that we've got through the insights, with things like being able to recognize gaps in the market where there's an opportunity potentially to create an offering that consumers want, or something that consumers are telling us about our existing products or services or capability, or our processes to serve them, and if they're maybe not working, etc. So we've really been able to, I guess, move the dial digitally for our customers based on what they're actually telling us. So, having that rich insight has been so powerful.
Oh, Tracy, I love that so much. It's this idea of not just solving for the moment, but also solving for the future while you're solving for the moment, and taking those customer insights. So it's not just data, the way that we talk about data, but it's looking for ways to deliver better experience, especially in this world where, I don't know about you, but this thing is rarely farther than an arm's reach away at any given point in time. And it's just these devices and these technologies and apps and services just sort of condition us for all the things that you said, speed, personalization, better experiences. So thank you. Jim, you happen to work for one of the most innovative companies in the world. And so this conversation about innovation and service, I'm sure hits near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's kind of grounded in a few basics independent of the innovation, which is number one, nobody wakes up in the morning hoping they have to reach out to customer service. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. And so because of that, we think about our focus on delivering an easy and expert experience. And the way we define that is easy. We think about it as low effort and high speed, right? No one has extra time. No one wants to take time out of their day to have to deal with customer service. So the experience better be easy and expert, and it better be intuitive. So you don't have to, read the instructions. It just needs to work. And then the expert piece, obviously you need to be an expert on the domain, whether that's, customer care, order support, technical support, and that's kind of obvious, the expertise. But the other side of expertise for us is being an expert on the user. And that's really about having the user context. So customers expect that you have the full 360 view of all of their history with the company. So that's all the purchase history, the marketing history, the service history. And then if you have that in one place, and by the way, this is no small feat for any organization, getting all that together, then you can really personalize the experience. And whether that's you're personalizing it on the website or you're personalizing it in remote service or in field service, you kind of have to have that data to do that. And I think if you have that as a framework, then all of a sudden that's where the innovation happens. And you can do things. Tracy, I loved your example of gleaning insights from each of those interactions and saying, well, what can we learn from our customers through all this? And there's some fascinating technologies we're using through products of ours like Service Cloud Voice that give us a full transcript. So it's speech to text conversion of all of our interactions. And then from that, you can actually use AI to mine all those and look for sentiment or keywords and things like that. And so, historically, you'd never be able to kind of listen to every conversation you're having with your customers, but with AI and the tech, now you can. And so I think that we're just getting started on all the possibilities there. But at the end of the day, independent of tech or innovation, it's really about solving customer problems and making their lives better, and just being reminded that experience needs to be easy and expert.
I love that. In many ways, this disruption that we've all experienced over the last year and a half is an opportunity to serve lessons so that we can move into the future to be better. And in many ways, getting back to basics is something I think we've all moved so fast, and technology is sort of I don't know, just made it easier to forget about those things. But now it's bringing it back home. And so I really appreciate that. In fact, though, Jim, I will tell you, I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, "I love calling contact centers." So I might be the only one with that.
I've never seen that one, Brian. That's amazing.
And so one of the things,
it's a custom made one, that one, right?
Yeah, it's the only one.
Yeah, I think it was
original.
Etsy.
Yeah.
I might have been the vendor.
There may be a market for it, though.
You both made me think of something here that I think, especially Jim, to your point about transcripts, and then also Tracy gleaning those insights and AI coming in to help us learn how to be better. One of the things that I remember from our state of service report was that agents feel like they are ambassadors for the brand. And the more that we can empower them to not only feel that, but to be that, it's a really special time in not only transforming or reimagining the role of customer service, but also reimagining and empowering the role of the agent. So with AI, with workforce management, Tracy, I'd love to hear how you're helping your teams remain agile, collaborative, and maybe if we could sneak in motivated.
Cool, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I think, using digital transformation to support that through the use of, things like Teams, Chatter, Community, again, if you'd have said to me 18 months ago, these will be key tools for your organization that you'll be using on a daily basis, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But actually, they as a leader, they actually enable me to be a little bit closer to my team as well, because some of the conversations that go on there, I can see some of the, the questions that the team have that I think, well, actually, I know the answer to that. Why have I not shared that? That whether it's something around a process or whether it's something kind of much more, strategic. So those conversations probably went on the floor back in the actual traditional environment that we didn't see. So having those digital channels has given me a level of insight that, potentially I didn't have before. Excuse me. I think the other couple of things I've just mentioned there as well is that, hybrid working is going to be part of all of our futures, I think. And we are, in the process at the moment of working out what that looks like. And I think maybe we could do a whole nother session on this subject, but there are so many moving parts to that and so many questions. But, first and foremost for us, it's about making sure that it works for the team, because we all had to make that move and we all had to make it really, really fast. And we've all adapted, we've changed, and we've been able to do that. But actually, let's now do that in a much more kind of, orchestrated way so that it works really, really well for everyone. And yeah, I think then just like I say, the utilization of some of the more digital tools. So previously, if you missed an important meeting, you missed an important meeting. Well, now, now they're all recorded because everybody's doing things remotely like this. So actually you can still feel part of the organization, still get the same messages, but just hear them, when it's convenient to you.
That's really, that inclusivity, I think, is understated in conversations at large. I think that's an important point, is that people do want to feel included, and that might be one of those elements of warmth that we could miss without intention of bringing that back into the fold. Before I go over to you, Jim, I just want to remind the audience that we are going to be taking your questions at the end of our conversation. So do please share them, I believe, in chat, and we will get to those questions at the end. So Jim, speaking of inclusivity and collaboration, what are your thoughts on this subject? Oh, Jim, I think the mute fairies attacked you.
Yikes, sorry about that. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for kind of in-person communication and collaboration. You think about kind of the contact center paradigm, agents being able to kind of walk down the row and get help or learn something, talk to a supervisor or kind of a higher level agent. But certainly, again, in this kind of world of remote work, instead of the contact center being a place, you need to figure out how simulate or how to replicate things like that. And we've had a lot of good luck with virtual collaboration tools. Tracy, you mentioned things like video meetings with recordings. Even 5 years ago, not nearly as common as they are now. Now it's just kind of part of everyday professional life. Other examples, we've had really good luck using Slack for swarming on cases, which is kind of a virtual equivalent of being able to walk down the row and talk to your manager or a more senior agent to get help. In fact, you can harness the power even beyond the kind of traditional context in our organization. And one of the things that I've seen in our experience and in talking to customers is oftentimes customer service resolution requires resources, not just within the service part of the company, but it could involve the entire company, right? There can be product people that need to be involved. There could be finance people if there's a billing issue. There might be fraud, legal people if there's a fraud issue. There could be all kinds of reasons why you need to really engage the entire company. Now, that's not on the majority of cases. It's on a very small number of cases, but those are the really hard cases that are very timely and expensive to solve. And so if you can figure out, hey, we have a way to collaborate virtually with anybody in our organization on behalf of solving a customer problem, that's a pretty powerful statement. It's kind of the equivalent of everybody in your company was just down the row from you in the contact center.
I mean, that's powerful. And I'll go as far as saying that's game changing. Essentially, what we're seeing there is that it introduces a new window for not only productivity, but just for resolution, insight, expertise. And we all in every engagement get all this smarter in real time. So it's like a knowledge center that works both ways. So thank you, Jim. And on that note, Tracy, this I think will be our last question before I leave you to final thoughts, and then we'll go to the questions from our audience. Since we have this opportunity to reimagine the role of service, maybe even rename things like contact center and field service, someone's got to do it. There's got to be that visionary, that leader in all of this for every company. So as a service leader, how are you thinking of not only taking care of customers, but also your service teams?
So I think a couple of things for me here. I think there's the practical. So, how do we make sure that people are actually well and have access to the resources, the tools that they need, that they have, that we have a whole kind of well-being program, if you like, to take care of people's mental, physical well-being, make sure that there's adequate breaks from work, that we're supporting them, whether that's in their personal life or whether that's in their career, etc. And then I think, really for the team, we need to make sure, as well as the wellness piece, that we're also giving them the support to develop their career. And this is probably stealing my point to leave with, but for me, customer service is a career choice, absolutely. And, a bit like some other vocational careers, you have to be a certain kind of person, I guess, to do that. So for me, it's super important that we have those pathways that people can follow, that they can understand, how they can grow, how they can develop, and how they can get the support that they need from the organization. And then I think, it's not about us telling them. It's about actually our teams being, part of that community where they can feed that back to us. And that's something that, we are very keen on in Estee Lauder Companies. We've got a number of communities of practice that are the opportunity for the teams to feed back on everything from, how they feel about some of our policies to how they feel about, the service they're able to give our customers, and where we might have opportunities for you, Jim, to make changes or improvements in the platforms that we use.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, but the one that really hit home was this idea that it's a choice, and I think it's also an opportunity to share with those who are considering a career in service that just the idea of that reactionary position it's not what it used to be. In fact, it's one where they get to help define what the future of this is and play a role in defining the future of service. That's amazing. Jim, what are you seeing on this front?
And I think it all, we think a lot about, happy agents equals happy customers. And so this concept of servant leadership is really strong from my perspective. Our frontline service agents are there to serve our customers. Obviously, that's kind of what service is. But I think as leaders, we also need to be there in service to our teams. And so I think it kind of flows that way as well. We spend a lot of time thinking about the experience of our support engineers, and not just experience in terms of the UI and layout of their tools. That's a piece of it, but increasingly, and I think the pandemic has shown a ton of light on this, it needs to be a holistic view of what that experience is. So Tracy made the comment about well-being. Obviously, the pandemic is still very much here, and it's impacted all of us in many different ways. We have to make sure that we're giving our teams time to breathe so they can show up and be their best when they're ready to serve our customers. That's important part of it. Are they taking their vacation time and things like that? It's important to take a break. Similarly, there's times when there's probably opportunities, and I think this will evolve over time, to do some really interesting things with schedules, right? To give people more flexibility. You think about it, when you had to go to a physical place to work, like a contact center, you were kind of bound by the having to have a commute, even if it was short, and work a given shift. But if you're doing things in your home, you could have really interesting things around shifts, and that could be really compelling for people that had to take care of their kids or care for an aging parent. And so you bring this kind of different balance into people's lives, enabled by technology, but they can still be fantastic at serving customers. And so I think there's this kind of inclusive angle to what we're seeing as well. And one of our core values is equality. And so it brings forward all kinds of opportunities to drive more equality into all of our organizations, because in all organizations, frontline service is a meaningful percentage of the employee base. And so we have a real opportunity as an industry to really help all of our organizations move the needle on that front as well.
Wow. Yeah, that is, you had me thinking that we're working from anywhere and we're working from home, but we're also doing that during a pandemic, and thrust into a new way of working in ways that nobody really got the manual or the instruction book, to kind of guide us through. And so well-being and wellness, that's beyond just customer service, right? That's an organization-wide leadership movement that I think we could pay more attention to as well. And so on that note, that before we go to questions, I just want to maybe turn it over to you, Tracy, and then Jim, to share just some parting thoughts. We talked about so much in AI and automation and agents and empowerment and workforce scheduling. And so what are some of the bits that you would leave for those watching here today to go back and change the way that they approach service in their organizations? Tracy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. I think, for me, never has the contact center been more integral in an organization's success in terms of that insight that they can bring, in terms of how close the contact center is to the customer. So, you really do have an opportunity working in the contact center to make a difference to your customers, and not just to the ones that you touch on a day-to-day basis, but on potentially the ones that you'll never get to touch, but by the feedback that you give and the way that you collect that and the way that that's fed up. And then the other piece I just have to repeat is that contact center careers are absolutely a choice, and a fabulous opportunity. And I say I've been doing this for 30 years, and I can honestly say I've enjoyed mostly every moment of it. So I hope that of the people that are watching, there's lots of people that are inspired to keep going with their careers in customer service. They're so rewarding on so many levels.
Oh, that's wonderful, Tracy. Thank you. Jim, over to you.
I think it's important to keep empathy in mind. I think about your comment about your bumper sticker, Brian, and it's just important to remember that no one has that bumper sticker. So when you're serving customers, keeping that in mind is key. I go back to, it's all about these easy and expert experiences, but to design the right experience for your customers, you have to actually know your customers, and that all starts with empathy. So the technology is important, and we all want to have really slick digital experiences, but at the end of the day, this is about people, understanding your customers, and that the role in service is to be there to help your customers. So I think empathy is such a critical value for anybody in service to really instill in their teams.
Yeah, that inspires me. I don't have an answer to this yet, but I would love to see conversations about how to also reimagine the metrics so that we are capturing those human-centered things. Like empathy is so important. I know that in the state of service, one of the fastest growing metrics was capturing customer effort. How hard is it for them to work with you? But empathy is one that spans every single aspect of the customer journey. And in a world where we're reminded every app and service we use in this new world tells us that we're the most important person, empathy really starts there, is understanding you and delivering to you the context and against your expectations, and even looking for ways to surpass your expectations. So thank you for that, Tracy. Thank you, Jim. We have some questions, and I want to jump into them here and get as many as we can done with our allotted time. So this is a question, it looks like it's going to be for both of you. So Tracy, I'll start with you. Today we heard Myra talk about best practices for work-life balance, setting boundaries, schedule blocking, etc. What new policies have you put in place, and what advice do you have for leaders on the call today?
So I wouldn't say we've necessarily put any policies in place, but in terms of kind of practices, I think, we've all realized through these changing times that, flexibility is key, wellness is key, and that some of them may be things that we thought we would never be able to do working at home, or some of the restrictions maybe that you put in place around kind of some of those schedule adherence things, and some of those things like, can't have a mobile phone on your desk, etc. I think some of those things we've proved through this process that actually, they're not relevant. So I think less about policies, but more about practices and flexibility, and recognizing that everybody's got something going on. Everybody needs different things from their manager, from their organization, to support them, etc. And I guess treating everybody as an individual rather than just as a mass of people where we have, a policy and one size has to fit all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Jim, what about you?
There's a couple of things that we think about. One is just making sure you're checking in with your teams, checking in with your front line, doing roundtables, really just asking people how they're doing. So it's important to kind of keep that qualitative pulse on how things are going. Quantitatively, we ask, we do employee surveys and ask questions like, hey, when you go home at night or on the weekend, can you kind of eject and forget work? And focus on other things. And I think that's really important. We're all juggling so much still through this pandemic. And so it's important to kind of have that balance and be able to step away. Along those lines, we really encourage our teams to take their vacation days. Especially you don't want everybody taking vacation days at the same, the last week of the year. So we want people to use them along the way. So they take care of themselves, and so we're there to serve our customers. And so I think that's key as well. But people just need to take care of each other. I think it just has to be very much top of mind, because again, this is just a people business.
It is, and to both of your points, my last book, this was before the pandemic, I kind of wish it published afterwards, explored the idea of digital wellness when every app and service is designing itself to take more and more of your attention and time. And I just wanted to add one point that when we talk about taking care of yourselves and taking care of each other, that doesn't always mean escaping to your favorite app or service to just scroll or swipe, because that too is sort of adding to the mix. And that the balance that we're exploring is ways, wellness and well-being is really about making yourself better, living your best life in ways that sometimes means putting your phone down. We're getting more and more questions here. All right. So earlier we talked about how the contact center is forever changing. And this is a really interesting question. Tracy, I'll start with you again. How has that changed, or how is that changing how you hire? Are there new skills or qualities that have emerged in this new hybrid model?
Absolutely. So I think resilience is a skill that, we probably, or as a capability, it's something we've probably always talked about in the past, because you had to be quite resilient to work in a contact center, but actually to work in the environment we work in and do that remotely or in a hybrid world, very independently, is absolutely, it is top. I think, Jim's point about empathy, absolutely, it is key, and actually, conversational skills. We're so, we're no longer focused on average handle time and how quickly can you wrap that call up and get on to the next one. It's actually about having a great conversation. It's about having, a passion for the subject that you're dealing with. So we've definitely seen a change, in our expectations of our people. And, moving from being, we talked about this a few times, but moving from being transactional to being experiential, this is about you having a great conversation with someone that leaves them, when they leave that conversation feeling great and feeling, actually, because they haven't got the bumper sticker, happy that they had to have that interaction today.
That, I think if we could capture that one piece right there and turn it into a playbook, it's so powerful. Even before the pandemic, the World Economic Forum had published its top 10 skills for 2025, and they were all human skills. Resilience was there, empathy was there, and even in our own research in the future of work, they're fairly similar. And so I think we're just gonna. These are things that I don't know about you, but I didn't learn in university or in school, and these are skills that we'll have to seek out and really start to empower our people to be successful here. Jim, how about you?
It's interesting. I think it's changed a little bit who we hire, but not because of what you mentioned, Brian, not because people are working from home or working from anywhere. From my perspective, it's more just about the experience of going through the pandemic itself. I think the world has realized that we all need to have more empathy for each other. And so that for us is kind of translated into the service experience. It's just been it's more a reminder than anything else. But the entire world, I think, is more empathetic now than it was 2 years ago, which is a good thing. There's certainly a lot of problems going on in the world, but that's maybe a silver lining of all this. And so I think it's just been a reminder for us that how important that is in our hiring.
That's a life lesson right there. And if we're not more empathetic, perhaps we could be, because the world could sure. I know I could use it. And it looks like we have. I'm going to try to squeeze in two more questions. I hope that's okay, everybody. As we talk about innovation and bringing these new channels to your team of agents, how are you helping to drive that change management across your teams? Tracy, we'll start with you.
That's an interesting question. I think, change in any organization is always been very fast paced, hasn't it? But it has really, really gathered momentum in the last, few years. And it's very easy to say to people, well, you need to be adaptable to change. And, that's kind of a skill or a requirement as part of the role. But actually the reality of that can often be quite different. And we certainly saw that when we were plunged into this. I think for us at Estee Lauder companies, it's totally about inclusion, which again is something we've already touched on, but it's about how do we, make sure that everybody feels that they have a voice, make sure that everybody feels that they are part of something, that they have the opportunity to question, to clarify, to challenge, to understand. And, certainly when it's about innovation, they have the opportunity to put forward ideas and suggestions and long gone are the suggestion schemes and those kind of old traditional methods that you had. It's good old conversation, and I hope that we're being able to do that through some of the communities of practice that we've established in Estee Lauder. But yes, change, managing and supporting people through change is always going to be an organizational challenge, but we absolutely invite our teams to come with us on that journey and share how they feel and be part of it.
I guess that's what it's really about. Collaboration, empowerment, inspiration, a lot of listening, empathy. I guess change management historically hasn't really conveyed those things. And as Jim, as you said earlier, keeping people at the center of all of this is really important. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question, Jim.
Yeah, I think it's all about the content of how you explain the change, with context also being important of the why the change is happening, but then also how it's communicated. And one of the things that we've really learned, it's been highlighted over the last couple of years, is that even in a virtual work from anywhere world, the best communicators to team members are their direct managers. That's where they want to hear it from. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about, number one, well, what's the message? What are the talking points? What's the visual on whatever the change is? And let's make sure we're all aligned on that. I mean, we'll do some tops down communication for sure, but more and more what we want to do is actually have the direct manager be the communicator of it and explain the context and have a conversation. And we've found that's really effective. Generally, if something's changing and people believe that it's been deliberated thoughtfully and they understand the why, what's the business challenge or customer challenge we're trying to solve, generally people are adaptable, to use your word. But when they don't know that, they don't think it's been deliberated well or well vetted, they don't understand the why, that's when it's just like you get into this world of change fatigue and it becomes overwhelming. And, in a world where, it's as competitive as it's ever been for talent, we owe it to our teams to do that well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People want to feel part of something bigger than just the role that they're in. And that goes so much beyond, the traditional things that we think about for recruiting and keeping talent. We just got another interesting question here, so I'm going to try to squeeze it in. I know I said there were two more, but now there are two more. I'm going to this one's really interesting. I just had a conversation with the Atlantic about this idea of proactive and predictive service models and how that's going to continue to reimagine the role of service. So this question is pretty straightforward. Tracy, and then Jim, how are you thinking about prevention of customer issues in the future?
I think that's anything but a straightforward question, Brian. I think that's I wish I had a crystal ball question, but I think we have to just keep doing what we're doing in terms of all of those kind of feedback mechanisms that I've spoken about. But I also think it's never been, we've always talked about kind of silos and things like that in organizations. It has, again, never been more important that the whole enterprise works together, whether that's on new product development or, whether that is on any kind of change or activity that's happening in the organization, that they collectively work together, in an end-to-end or 360 way, where the customer really is absolutely core to that. Because we've all been there, you develop a product, it doesn't quite do what it wants, that has a knock-on impact to the contact center, etc. So for me, I think that the best way to identify those future challenges is absolutely to take an enterprise-wide view of the customer need, and start from there.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, putting the customer at the center of this.
So simple. We've been talking about it for a number of years, but it's not always happening.
Yes, I love it. And that was a great answer. Thank you, Tracy. Jim?
I think there's a big difference. There's two terms. One is prevention, and the other one that gets talked about a lot in our industry is deflection. And I think it's really important to understand the nuance of both of those. Deflection, I would posit, solves a company problem, right? You are deflecting assisted contacts or cases from my contact center. And that's a good thing for the company because it saves us money. That is quite different from prevention. Prevention is the customer never has the issue at all because the product, the service just worked, right? That is actually solving a customer problem. So you have to be careful and you think about, is it a good thing that you deflected a case, you prevented in this case, but you're deflecting a case because a customer solved an issue on the website. Now, you might say that's good because customers prefer websites to calling contact centers, but it's still a defect in your customer experience. The fact that a customer had to go out of their way and Google your product or service and figure it out and go to self-service, that's still a defect in the experience. Even if you're able to be proactive, let's say you know a customer is going to have an issue and you reach out to them, you might say, well, wow, proactive, that's amazing. And it might be better than, reactive service on your website or in your contact center, but it's still a defect in the customer experience. So I think it's really important to think about true prevention is the best customer experience. The best case is the one that never happens. So prevention truly is the best medicine.
Whoa, that Courtney, if you're listening, that is something we have to explore following this event. Jim, I'd love to circle back with you and Tracy specifically on this question for something that I'm working on as well. I mean, that's game changing, both of these answers, and I think this is where you can set the stage for some true innovation, not just in service, but the mindset around the role of service as well. So I think, from a time perspective, I'll probably call it there. Otherwise, I'll keep you on for a few more hours. And I know it's later there in London. So thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Jim. I don't know about you, but I feel inspired and smarter as a result of this. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm just going to leave you with one fun question here before we say goodbye, and then you could say your goodbyes at the end of your answer. Tracy, how are your teams celebrating Customer Service Week?
Oh, gosh, lots of activities, lots of dressing up, lots of silly hats, and something bizarre going on with pumpkin carving today, but I haven't quite got into the detail of that. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tracy. Jim?
Oh my gosh, we've got giveaways, costumes, some wellness activities, some speakers. It just kind of amazing. It's so much fun. My favorite week of the year. Happy Customer Service Week to everybody. Tracy, great to be on this conversation with you. And Brian, thanks for hosting us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, everyone. We'd encourage you to join our Service Insider community where you can network with fellow service professionals and continue conversations like this. I believe that the lovely Slage has added that link for you in the chat. So hopefully it's there. So again, thank you very much and have a great Customer Service Week, everyone.